My process, winding back to my origin story of starting in games, I suppose I had some sort of slightly romantic view of what my career was going to be like. Maybe I'll have an office, and maybe
Yeah.
people will have to knock when they come in, and I'll have, I'll have a ritual, and I'll pour myself a cup of tea, and there'll be this magical thing. I do it every morning. What I ended up doing was I sat on a half-size school desk in the fire, in like the fire exit
Yeah.
space, and on the shop floor. I started in what we called the AI dungeon, where there was no natural light all day, every day, 24/7, 365 days a year. And all of the romance of
Mhm.
process was driven out of me. I pride myself to some degree of not needing a special situation to make work happen and to really have a healthy disrespect for the medium to say, this is work that needs to be done. Yes, I'm going to pour my creative heart and soul into it, but I don't need a special scenario. So I'm upgrading from a B plus to an A minus.
There you go.
I'm based in, well, my wife and I, we're sort of split half and half between LA and Birmingham
Oh, nice.
in,
Okay.
in the middle of England. You find me inside my house that I've been told I've accidentally decorated as a WeWork.
It looks like a studio, you know? I could see it as a little creative studio.
I mean, having said that, I don't know why I would take that as not a compliment. I mean, in my opinion,
Yeah.
where else would a person rather live than in a WeWork?
In a WeWork.
Hmm,
Professional. It'll only be a matter of time
that's right.
before they start selling them off as apartments anyway, so you know.
Exactly
Ahead of the
right. Yeah,
curve.
it's a natural segue for them.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so Birmingham and then Los Angeles, the little time between there. And I'm trying to remember, I know that you know Seldy, right? Seldy
I
Gray.
do, yeah.
Do you
She was
also know
my,
Zoe? Zoe Dennis?
yeah, that's right, Fika, right?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. I met Zoe through a friend of mine, and then I met Seldy. I recorded with Seldy recently. I recorded with Zoe almost a year ago. And then after talking to Seldy, I'm like, who else do you know that I need to talk to? She goes, Rob. You got to get on with Rob. So I'm
Who
glad we
else
were able
can
to
you
get
drag
connected.
in? Okay, great. Well, I assume Seldy said a lot of horrible things about me, which means naturally I'm now legitimized in saying terrible, terrible things
Yep.
about her.
We've got a ditch to dig out of today, so
I think the key is to just talk,
go.
sort of enforce that reality.
Manifest it out. Manifest it out.
That's right, exactly right.
So, Rob, how do I pronounce your last name just so I get this right? Yescombe?
How would you like to pronounce it?
Yeah, see, I want to say Yescombe, not go too
That
far in
sounds
the comb,
perfect.
but
I love it. I prefer that pronunciation of it. And really, who am I to tell you how to pronounce my name? You're the one that has to say it most.
it's just you. No. Well, so tell me a little bit. You are based in Birmingham, like you said, also in Los Angeles. Did you grow up in Birmingham? And how did that kind of shape your love of film, the arts, theater, television, video games, all forms of media?
Well, thank you for such an enormous question.
Yeah.
So I was not born in Birmingham, but I was born in London.
Uh-huh.
And my relationship with film early on was that my older brother, who's a couple of years older than me, when he was younger, wanted to be a director. And so his way of sort of learning, because this is in a pre-internet age, right? We were
Hmm.
kids. The way that he taught himself an understanding of film was we would sit in front of Hitchcock movies and he would reverse storyboard. So he would transcribe the shots to paper to learn,
Wow.
well, how was the sequence made. And really, a lot of my early education was looking at what he was doing.
Hmm.
And then I mean, it's a very strange way that I ended up where I am, which is that I thought for a long time when I was younger, as a maybe like 19, 18, 19, 20 years old, I wanted to be a performance artist. So I went to art
Oh.
school in the UK, in London, just outside London. And as I was looking around at the percentage of people who were employed at the end of this art course, it was about, I don't know, 0.3%. And I thought,
Yeah.
oh, I think I might have to do something different here. And I was very lucky that I had a tiny little shoebox, like working studio in an old abandoned warehouse.
Hmm.
It was opposite an Indian Asian TV production company. And I
Okay.
started moonlighting, because I got friendly with them. I started moonlighting, writing Indian cable TV.
Wow.
So, but this was like super duper low budget, where the total budget for the show per week that I was writing was £250 total. And this is broadcast in the UK, not broadcast in India.
Yeah.
But the thing that was was kind of good about that was that it meant that because we couldn't afford to hire anybody, we had to learn how to write, direct, edit, produce, do the whole thing because we didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And then by incredible coincidence, I wrote a script for a sitcom that never got made. But
Hmm.
at that time in the UK, it's a very long answer. At that time in the UK, there was a government program called TAPS for new writers, like awards for new writers. And I got shortlisted for this comedy award for this script that never got made.
Wow.
And by insane coincidence, there was a video game company called Free Radical Design in the Midlands in the
Hmm.
UK who happened to be looking for a games writer. And at that time, the notion of someone whose job was just to write games didn't really exist.
Yeah.
Most of it was done by a programmer who also wrote, an artist who also wrote, a musician who also wrote. So it was always like an additional discipline. So they were looking for someone to write a game. They happened to get in touch with this very obscure awards body and said, "Hey, is there anybody who wants to write a game?" And I said, "Well, I've been playing games since I was a kid on BBC Micro on the Amstrad."
Hmm.
And so I went overnight from a £250 a week show to a $30 million game with no idea how games got made, what good writing was, and none of the skills. What I had was, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more as we get in,
Yeah.
was I had the white hot magnesium burn of the desire to express myself, right? For the white hot
Hmm.
magnesium burn of creativity, but none of the craft to back it up. And
Yeah.
I was in the incredibly fortunate and unfortunate position of working on this huge title with none of the skills to do so, and had this at the start of my career, a catastrophic disaster. And as a result of that, realized, well, actually, maybe I need to rethink the way that I do this, which really turned my head completely in the opposite direction,
Hmm.
away from the pure art with a capital A, which of course had been instilled in me through art school, to the craft and say, okay, how do we do this scientifically?
Yeah.
And that's how I ended up in games. How I ended up in movies uh, is an even stranger story, which is that I wrote a spec because when I was working in games, I've had the good fortune to work on lots of different genres, but I knew I also wanted to write for film.
Yeah.
And I wrote a spec in, I want to say 2011. I was so green, I wrote it in Microsoft Word
Oh,
and like
yeah.
tabbed it along to format it. I was like, well, that kind of looks like it. And it was, green enough and lacked enough craft that in those days I'm like, well, a script is meant to be like 110 pages and this is too long. So I'll just change the formatting to change the script. So I was absolutely green as grass.
Yeah.
However, at the center of that idea was a pretty good premise.
Hmm.
And I didn't know a single person in the business except for one who,
Okay.
by happy coincidence, happened to connect me to a producer who at that time was just kind of, a very small operation, who
Hmm.
optioned this Microsoft Word script for a tiny amount of money. And then 12 years went by and I completely forgot about it. And
Hmm.
then my wife and I, we were on a road trip. We were in Vegas. In the middle of the night, I get a text from an actor that I'd made a short film with 5 years prior. And he says, "Hey, I'm auditioning for a script with your name on it." I said, "No, you're not."
Oh.
He said, "Yeah, here it is." Couldn't believe it. The following morning, get an email from the producer who says, "Hey, Netflix are paying for it and Andy Mackie's going to star in it and we shoot in Budapest." So I got,
Wow.
in fairness to that movie, really, that was carried to the finish line by other writers in the interim 12 years.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how that seed really became, the genesis of my career in film.
And that was that film, Outside the Wire. Is that right?
That's right,
2021.
Outside the Wire on Netflix.
Wow. So not some people stumble into it, some people really make a go at it. It takes them 20 years. You've been working in other things, and yet this, like you said, the seed you planted really grew over 10, 12 years to something that really got you into the industry more.
It's true, and I'm glad that it happened that way because, if not that I think it would have happened, but if, let's say, that script in Microsoft Word and they said, yeah, let's go off and make it, and now you have to go through the process of development and production, I wouldn't have had the slightest clue what I was doing.
Yeah.
But luckily, having spent so much time in games, worked on dozens and dozens of games in that time,
Hmm.
it's not exactly the same, but there's a lot of transferable skills across development and production in games. So
Yeah.
thankfully now, I have a reasonable backstop of knowledge and experience to help move things forward.
Yeah. My question, I guess, for you on the game side, there's so many there's more hype again about converting games to movies or games to shows. I mean, Last of Us, Halo was not as good the last couple of years. But I feel like there's a little more of an excitement right now of, okay, games are working. Let's Minecraft, Mario Brothers, the rest of it. How would you say that you approached writing a game differently than maybe some of your more recent scripts for film and television?
I'd actually like to change the question, if I may,
Let's do it,
which
yeah.
is before I get to yours, which is the challenge of adapting game to film.
Hmm.
The two key challenges are number one, a lot of legacy IP. Let's look at something like Tomb Raider or Call of Duty or Resident Evil, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Those games were made because there were their interactive wish fulfillment
Hmm.
based on wishes created by linear media. And here's why that's a challenge, which is that if you're scrolling through Netflix and you come across a movie and it says, he's a hard drinking cop who plays by his own rules, you think, well, that's boring. I've seen it a million times.
Yeah.
But if you're scrolling through Steam or the PlayStation Store and it says, you're a hard drinking cop and you play by your own rules, suddenly it sounds fun again. But
Yeah.
then when you try and convert it back into linear media, you're stuck in that space that feels played out. So that's
Hmm.
problem number one. Problem number two is there is oftentimes a huge difference, a gulf between a game's content and a game's culture. So, for
Hmm.
example, if you look at a game like, let's say DayZ, right? For anybody that doesn't know, DayZ is like an open world multiplayer game with permadeath in it. So it means if you die once, you're out off the game. You have to gather supplies, and there's a few zombies dotted around, but the real threat is other players who might hunt you and kill you.
Hmm.
When that game launched, I want to say 10 years ago, maybe now, something like that, it was a very serious, dour, grounded, gritty presentation. It was like almost like The Road, right?
Hmm.
But part of the reason why that game became so successful was because of all the social media content of like, reels and TikToks and stuff of the funny ways that players stab each other in the back. It's hilarious watching those videos.
Yeah.
So the content of the game is deadly serious, but the culture is comedy. And
Interesting.
now to adapt that, we've got to figure out, well, where the hell am I on that slider? That's
Yeah.
a very, very difficult thing to do if you're someone who's not coming from inside that culture. And there's only so many screenwriters who are going to be inside the individual culture of an individual game.
Yeah.
So it is increasingly challenging as we diversify into other games IP. To your second question about, or to your original question about, I guess, how do you approach a game versus a movie, right?
Yeah.
And what's interesting about movies is basically, and this is broad strokes, but for the last 120 years,
Hmm.
a movie has been 2 hours and somebody learned something about themselves, and that's the end.
Yeah.
I've been working in games for 20 years. I can't tell you what a game is because Angry Birds is a game, as much as Metal Gear Solid is a game, as much as Boyfriend Dungeon is a game.
Hmm.
They have no overlap in the technology, the audience, the mechanics, the type of story, the storytelling within, and yet they're all under this umbrella of games. And some
Yeah.
products have overlaps and some don't, because the real difference is this, which is that the rules and principles of narrative have been the same for thousands of years.
Hmm.
But with a game, you are designing an equation bespoke to that product through which story will be delivered in this individual case. And some of those are repurposed elements, but basically you're trying to design an equation through which storytelling happens, not that you're redesigning what storytelling is.
Yeah. And that's interesting what you're saying. It's a little more wish fulfillment, first person taking on the story and interacting versus watching something play out separately, or like you're saying, a narrative element there.
Well, even that I wouldn't say is 100% true because there are
Hmm.
games in which you don't have that kind of agency.
Yeah,
It's such an amorphous medium that you couldn't even say that games are about winning. That's not even necessarily true, or
that's
even
true.
about
Yeah.
conflict. That's not even necessarily true. It truly is. All we can say is it is in some way experiential. That's probably
Hmm.
about as specific as you can get.
Yeah, you're right. The umbrella's a little too weak to just say game, movie, game, movie. It's very different there.
But that's the joy of it, is that the fun of a movie is that you get to, in the best cases,
Hmm.
The script is something that you can polish to a high shine, or at least that's the ambition.
Yeah.
With a game, that is never really true because the
Mhm.
final version of it is a collaboration between the game writer and a bunch of other people making the game. But let's say the game writer and someone who I'm never going to meet, which is the player. We're going to
Yeah.
work together to make their final experience. And that to me is the joy of it, is the collaboration with a stranger.
Yeah. That's interesting. And like you said, it's whatever you write is so integrated into everything else that it's not just your own. Do you have a game, I guess, that you have written on or worked on that you're especially proud of, or you're like, you know what, that was a special time because of something you learned or XYZ?
Gosh, I mean, the thing that's interesting is that what I do in film is predominantly action comedy.
Hmm.
But because the development and production cycles of games are so long, excuse me, because they're so long, a single game could be 6, 7 years if you hit the bricks.
Yeah.
If you only work one genre, it's very hard to pay the bills because those games don't come around that often. So I've had the good fortune to work across many different genres. So, for example, in the same year, um, I wrote a game called RIME, RAME,
Hmm.
which is a sort of Studio Ghibli style platform game, in which we were trying to tell a story as rich and allegorical as something like Life of Pi,
Yeah.
but it's 10 hours with not a single word of dialogue.
Wow.
And so you're just trying to tell that story through art and symbolism and implication and trying to steer the player towards a revelation about themselves and about the story that may not be 100% what you intended, but we're going to feel
Hmm.
the same feeling at the same moment, even if we can't articulate it for the same reason.
Yeah.
That's a much more high-minded, let's say artistic with a capital A approach to game storytelling. But the same year, the same company, I also made a murder mystery called The Invisible Hours, which was very, very, very dialogue driven, all about specifics.
Hmm.
And in that case, what was fun about that is um, in the mid 80s, a designer called Ian Livingstone popularized what are called choose your own adventure books. Maybe people remember those.
Yeah.
The reason why he propagated those was in pursuit of, in inverted commas, naturalism, right? Because life is full of
Mhm.
choices. But the structure of it isn't really representative of real life. In the book, you travel in a straight line, you reach a binary point, and you choose left or right. But life is not that shape. The
Yeah.
shape of life is that at this exact moment in time, you, Tristan, you are the protagonist of this story. I am the humble supporting character who showed up to bore you. But at the exact same time, sorry, I'm the protagonist, and you're the humble supporting character who showed up. And these people walking past my window over here are background to us, but we're
Yeah.
background to them. And all of those stories need to be not only perfectly synchronized, they all need to be equally important and equally unimportant in order for us to experience reality in the shape that it currently is.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to try and do that in a game? So The
Wow.
Invisible Hours is murder mystery in the Agatha Christie style. It's in a mansion in the rain on an island.
Hmm.
Takes 1 hour to go through, but because there are 7 suspects in that mansion, there's actually 7 hours of concurrent narrative occurring within the single hour. So
Wow.
this is predating things like Punch Drunk and interactive theatre, but it's in that vein, which is to say you have a unit of time in which a fixed story will occur, but how
Hmm.
you behave inside that unit of time may completely change your perspective without the story ever branching. So let's say you walk into that mansion, you see, well, here's a detective standing over a dead body. No one's going to tell you to make a choice, but maybe you might decide to follow that detective upstairs to the attic.
Hmm.
However long you spend up there, you're going to miss what's happening in the drawing room, the dining room, the bedroom, the basement. Whereas I might be looking in those rooms at the exact same time, meaning that you and I and other players could end up with totally different perspectives on who the murderer is, how many murders took place, even what genre of story we're inside of, purely based on how we behave inside that space, inside that unit of time. Story never changes, we change, our perspective changes.
No small task. Not an easy one to sit down and write, right?
No, well, I mean, it's a good thing to pick on because the challenge with something like that is If you and I were real actors in a let's say a stage production of that game,
Yeah.
if I need to get you out of the scene that you and I are currently in at 1 minute 15, I need to get you into a scene that's already in motion, 3 minutes 4 seconds upstairs. Not only am I calculating when to get you out of this scene and when to get you into the next one, I'm also calculating the speed and distance that you have to travel because that scene is happening 3 stories up
Yeah.
or in the basement or whatever. Now, if we're live actors and you're 5 seconds late to that scene, those actors can fill. But because this is all baked animation, a single second out of sequence could break 7 hours of narrative.
Wow.
So when you're rehearsing it, all of that's against the stopwatch. That sounds tough, but the hard part is writing it. Because in order to break the paradox of how that's written, you need to know exactly to the second how long every scene will be before you write it.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was tough. But the net result of that, even though it sounds very complicated, and I suppose it was, but the net result is when you stand in that environment and the story is happening around you, whether you catch up with it or not, it feels like real life.
Which is great to see in games getting a little closer to, or to, I guess, adding a little layer of complexity here or there to make it a little more immersive.
We tried.
Yeah. Well, and I saw it was well reviewed. I know I looked at it on IMDb and I was like, I've never heard of this game, but it looked interesting and the animation style was interesting as well. So that's very cool.
Thank you. That's one more player. That's it. We just need you to buy one unit. Come on, just
There you
please
go.
one.
Then you get that house. No,
Yeah, that's it. Each unit is $400,000.
yep. I guess last thing on games before we move a little towards Jackpot, is there a game you worked on that you would just love to see converted to a TV show or a movie? Is there anything you worked on, or even from Free Radical? I mean, I know I grew up loving Time Splitters. I've always dreamed of doing something like that, but we've had a couple other time jumping shows that haven't done so well. Is there something that you're like, you know what? In a perfect world, I'd love to adapt this.
Well, I'll work backwards. The Invisible Hours is the number one because I think there's a
Yeah.
really interesting way to try and do that linearly is a real interesting challenge. What goss can I drop? There was a draft of a Time Splitters movie many, many years ago. It didn't happen.
Oh boy.
I'm not sure I can remember a single thing about it. No, I guess I can't. Um, what else have we done over the years that we would have? No, there was some vague talk about FARPOINT, which was a
Okay.
game I did for Sony in 2017 as well. Um, yeah, I would say okay. I'd say The Invisible Hours is still number one. Hard to resist.
Yeah. I mean, after your description, I was going to say stage production or yeah, television or otherwise, it would be fun. I know The Residence, which is just on
Oh yeah.
Netflix, kind of dipping that similar tone, Pulp Fiction, Guy Ritchie of let's tell a story from 20 different parts, unreliable narrator, we're getting things. So I find it's a fun medium. That would definitely be cool.
Mhm.
Let's talk a little bit about Jackpot because I went and saw Jackpot at a theater here in LA with Paul Feig there, kind of talking about the film and what happened and how it was put together and how the script first got on his desk. What was your first, I guess, germ of the idea and where did this first start for you?
Well, a lot of what I do is very influenced by game design, naturally. So the way I see it is this, is that I'm always looking for, so if you're designing a game, you're looking for an interesting rule that's going to be an engine that makes different types of fun. So
Yeah.
in movie terms, you might look at something like, say, Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Which is if you go to sleep, Freddy's going to get you. It's a
Yep.
brilliant rule that just is an engine to make dozens and dozens of interesting sequences. So in the case of Jackpot, I was working on a game and hit on the game mode, which is, hey, what if one person wins the lottery and everybody else can get it if they kill them within a set amount of time? It's a fun game.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? I think it would be more fun to explore this as a movie. So I was having dinner with my UK agent, Nish Panchal at Curtis Brown. Said, I got what I think is a good idea for a movie. So wrote it. Gave it to my US rep. He handed it the next day to Jeff Kirschenbaum, Roth Kirschenbaum. The following morning, Jeff said he wanted to do it. So that all
Wow.
happened very quickly.
Yeah.
And then Jeff did all the hard lifting for the next 3 years of actually putting the thing together.
Hmm.
So saying you want to do it and getting it done, two very different things. But him and Selby, of course, and Zach Roth at Roth Kirschenbaum, fantastic development partners, unheard
Hmm.
of.
Yeah, I mean, I want to take it back just 1 second because you're one of the first writers that we've had that I know we've had some like producer writers or actor writers doing short films and stuff. You're one of the first screenwriters that has a good feature out there that was on Prime and, had maybe a small theatrical run. When you say sat down and wrote it, what does that process look like? Do you remember the timeline or were you a flashcard guy? I know everyone's got something to it, but what does that look like for you to sit down,
Well,
wrote it?
my process, winding back to my origin story of starting in games.
Yeah.
When I first arrived at that company after coming out of Indian TV,
Hmm.
I suppose I had some sort of slightly romantic view of what my career was going to be like. And I thought, well, maybe I'll have an office, and maybe
Yeah.
people will have to knock when they come in, and I'll have I'll have a ritual, and I'll pour myself a cup of tea, and there'll be this magical thing. I do it every morning.
Yeah.
What I ended up doing was there was no room for my desk because games writers didn't really exist. And
Hmm.
so I sat on a half-size school desk in like the fire exit
Yeah.
space and on the shop floor with the programmers who all hated sunlight coming through the windows because it reflected off their screen. So all the windows were covered with bin liners, with trash bags.
Yeah.
So I started in what we called the AI dungeon, where there was no natural light all day, every day, 24/7, 365 days a year. And all of the romance of
Hmm.
process was driven out of me,
Yeah.
thankfully. I don't, I pride myself to some degree of not needing a special situation to make work happen and to really have a healthy disrespect for the medium to say this is work that needs to be done. Yes, I'm going to pour my creative heart and soul into it, but I don't need a special scenario. So once upon a time, I used to be a whiteboard guy rather than
Hmm.
the cards guy. I used to love the theatrics of having
Hmm.
the big whiteboard on around that. If I was working with a team, that would be different. I would still go back to that. But as an individual, um, it's an outline going into Microsoft Word,
Yeah.
and then I'm writing from that outline, or rather, I'm agonizing over that outline, and then eventually writing from that outline. But the simpler, the better. The less romance, the better.
That's a good way to put it because, I read Stephen King's On Writing a few years ago, dabbled in a little first draft screenplays myself, and he does make it sound like you need a glass of whiskey in the morning at the chair in your wonderful study, books all around you, and you just sit down for 4 hours. And I'm like, I don't know that everyone has that ability or setting or if that's really how everyone works. So it's good to hear that you could take away some of the romantic element and just kind of
Well,
get down
I'm
to
kind of
work.
misleading you, of course, because Stephen King, I assume, does that because it makes him feel cool.
Yeah,
What makes me feel cool is saying I don't need it.
there you go.
So
To each
everybody
their own.
needs a thing. I think
Yeah.
that said, though, it's functionally useful to think it's
Hmm.
cool to not need anything.
Yeah. So for everyone listening, whatever makes you feel cool, and I guess gets you to write. Do
Mhm.
you remember Jackpot? How long it took you from outline to delivering that draft to the producers?
I would say probably first draft is maybe 3 months
Okay.
from conception to execution.
Yeah.
So that's including the outline. And then I guess probably Inner Circle gets to give notes on it, and so it was probably
Hmm.
another 2 weeks. And then that went to my UK agent, and that went to the US agent, and that was the thing that kicked the door open. And having said that, that draft is not the production draft by any
Of
stretch of the
course.
imagination.
Yeah.
In between that draft and the one that was shot, 17 drafts, which is not,
Wow.
it sounds like a lot. It's not really that much.
Yeah.
And not all of those are dramatic rewrites. Some of them are pulling stuff in and out for budget and taste.
Hmm.
But what really mattered to me was the premise preserved. That's really what's most important for me
Yeah.
because we pulled lots of sequences in and out of that movie,
Hmm.
but because they were all in service to the premise, it doesn't feel like your guts are being ripped out. Like, oh no, my masterpiece is being pulled apart.
Yeah.
It's all in support of the premise, which ultimately is the thing that gets me excited.
Yeah, I guess when you get studio notes, how have you? I know you worked in games for a while and maybe got more notes there or less. how does it feel when someone says, "Hey, we don't like this. Hey, we do like this"? Are you able to divorce yourself completely, or do you really take a minute and fight back on things, or how does that kind of process work?
At this point, yeah, I'm long divorced from
Yeah.
that kind of emotional investment. I mean, in a way, I'm sort of lucky because my formative years, in which I would have been more note resistant, all happened, in the subcutaneous world of the AI dungeon in games.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
the time I got to film, I'm a salty enough sea dog to not take anything personally, and also to know to say yes and
Yeah.
truly, truly. Sometimes it can be hard to do, but that motto from improv,
Hmm.
there's not a more useful thing you can say in creative industry. Yes and yes and.
Yeah.
Sometimes, occasionally, you'll come up against people whose input is um, let's say, lacks insight to a degree that it becomes destructive.
Hmm.
But no one's ever intending to
Yeah.
destroy anything. So as long as you are building, and this is going back all the way back to what I was saying at the beginning, is as long as you are craft forward, you
Hmm.
can always say, here's why I made this decision. If you don't agree, do you agree with if you don't agree with the execution, do you agree with the notion of why I made it? If
Yeah.
not, okay, let's talk about why I made that and lead them back until you find the place where you do agree and then walk forward together.
Yeah, it sounds like having that ability to, like you said, know what's at the heart of your story, and then working collaboratively to make it kind of come to screen. I guess my next question with that is, do you get clued in on potential castings, and does that influence your writing, or is it really like, hey, you know what, the characters are written here. Until we're on set, it's not really going to be meddled with much.
Well, in the case of Jackpot, Cena was on from pretty early on, so we got to
Okay.
write to his voice.
Yeah.
And then Aquafina came on much later in the process, around the same time that Paul came on.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, just by sort of happy coincidence, my comic taste was sort of in tune with her style, but we still
Yeah.
retooled it a bit to make sure that it really fit for her,
Hmm.
as one should, I think.
Yeah.
If we can lean on the skills of someone who's doing it naturally, we should do that.
I guess following up with that, I know there's script coordinators on set. Were you on set at all, or were you, just in LA or in Birmingham the whole time?
I was on set for a couple of weeks, yeah.
Okay. How much of the writing do you do as it's in production and being shot?
Well, Paul has a very collaborative process,
Hmm.
not just in terms of writing, but in terms of improv, because that's partly his
Yeah.
background. So a lot of that is happening between the actors. Also, you have punch up people who come in, a new couple of people every couple of weeks just to try and plus it and add jokes. So
Hmm.
it is very dynamic. But also equally, I don't want to insert myself into it. At that point,
Yeah.
it's Paul's movie, and I don't respect that begrudgingly. I respect it joyfully to have
Hmm.
someone with that level of talent and experience to say, okay, I'll take it from here. Go with God. I'm thrilled.
Yeah. Who serves as a gut check when you go to first pitch an idea, or like with Jackpot, who'd you run it by first? Was it your wife? Was it maybe manager or business partners? Who outside of your head is the first person you like to talk to?
It's always my wife. Nothing leaves the house until it's been through her filter.
She's a good filter. Yeah.
Yeah, she's a world class literary editor.
Oh,
So
that's great.
I lucked out.
Yeah. That's awesome. As far as I guess with both Outside the Wire and Jackpot, the time it took and otherwise, are you always working on other projects and other ideas? Do you kind of sit and let yourself take things in for a little? How does that look after you've first gotten an idea written down?
I think it is true what I said before, which is that I feel mostly um, emotionally insulated from the pains of development at this point. It's all just
Yeah.
normal, and I trust the people that I collaborate with. However, one of the things that I instigated early on that I still do because I think it's just good business practice is write the next thing
Hmm.
and build a critical mass of material. We have at the moment a new movie at Netflix that we're developing. We have another that we're in negotiations with someone on. Another we're in negotiations with someone on. Another one now going out to the market imminently.
Nice.
I think if one project's giving you pain and you've got 10 others you can look at.
Yeah.
I think that's a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, diversifies where your where your heart is and what matters for sure.
And the way I see it is when I first went freelance, before even in movies, just as a freelance writer in games,
Yeah.
um, not only is there a question of how much emotional stock should you put in any individual product, but also just the reality of maintaining a business as a
Hmm.
freelancer. You want the vines to be close together. You don't want to be like desperately trying to reach the next one because you left it too long. The thing I equate it to is like being a freelancer is like quicksand. You don't want to get on a pogo stick and jump into quicksand with a single point of entry. You're going to sink right to the bottom. You
Yeah.
need to spread yourself out so you don't sink. It can happen if
Hmm.
you don't. So if your leg's sinking, that's okay. The arms and the other foot, they're still all right. Still above water.
Yeah. I guess following up on that, what's some advice you have for writers starting off? Something maybe you wished you knew when you were younger, or even now, just saying, no matter the age, if you're going to screenwriting, here's two or three things I wish you would know as you get started.
To new writers who are just starting to feel the pull,
Yeah.
the mistake I made was resisting really, really doubling down on the craft.
Hmm.
I thought that my enthusiasm was going to be enough to carry me, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And if I could go back and change anything, that's the thing I would change. Is if I hadn't been so dumb and I'd figured it out sooner, to be a student of it of the craft, that I would definitely change.
Yeah.
As for people who are in the middle of it, well, hey, you're doing as well as I am. So we're all just clawing our way out the pit together, aren't we? But I do okay. The one thing I do think is important, and this may not necessarily be true for everybody, but this is my perspective, which is I've worked in games at some pretty data-driven companies in some cases, and I
Hmm.
feel very cognizant of what's happening behind the UI of a streaming service.
Yeah.
And really, look, the odds of a user rowing across 10, columning across 5, landing on the tab, converting to a view, the
Hmm.
odds are zero. Nobody's doing that. And the
Yeah.
only way that the studio can de-risk that problem is with cast, who are very expensive, with the
Hmm.
algorithm whose influence ends on the edge of the platform, or with premise that's free.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the success, or a significant portion of the success of any given movie, comes down to there's going to be a conversation between two strangers who I'm never going to meet. One of them's going to say to the other one, "What's the movie about?" And if that other person doesn't have an answer that is so laser beam precise and can be pitched by someone who doesn't pitch things for a living,
Hmm.
if I haven't designed it with that in mind, the product's in trouble.
Yeah.
So sometimes we can be tempted into, let's say, less saleable aspects of our own product before we've thought about how the product is received. What is the tip of the spear? The tip of
Yeah.
the spear is two strangers saying, "What's the movie about?"
Hmm.
So I,
And
I really think, especially now, premise is everything.
yeah, that's such a good point. Because you're right, because everyone's trying to make something unique or their own or some of the other ways. But if it's not simple enough to describe two strangers, describe it to each other, then it's a tough sell. I mean, even going to theaters, I know, talking with friends or otherwise, I'll pitch a movie I've seen a trailer for, and if you can't describe it easily, they're not going to go. I just saw The Ballad of Wallace Island, and it was like, okay, let me just distill it down, because no one's going to go see it with the first description. It's like, oh, a guy plays a concert on an island for one guy. Or, he and an old bandmate are reunited accidentally after 20 years. Um,
Well, this is
yeah.
none of this is to say that non-premisey movies can't be wonderful and can't be successful.
Yeah.
The question is if there was a way to steer that into something that was easier for someone to tell a friend about,
For
is
sure.
that going to undo your artistry?
Yeah.
I suspect in a lot of cases it wouldn't.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I guess last thing, everyone's worried about AI or otherwise, or YouTube taking over, supplanting, traditional movies and film, which it kind of has done. I know there's a lot of worries out there. What are a couple things that keep you optimistic about the industry or about your own career, or continuing to write, create, and pitch?
Well, coming from a semi-technological background,
Yeah.
I take a sort of mixed view. I remember in the early 2000s working with this was around the time when motion capture first became a sort of affordable solution for animation in games.
Mm-hmm.
And we had an animation team at the studio. 5 of them said, "This is an abomination. We'll never use it.
Yeah.
Keyframe forever." And the other 5 said, "Okay, we'll find a way to integrate." The first 5 are not in the business anymore.
Yeah.
The last 5 are still going strong. I think that taking a binary view that any kind of integration with artificial intelligence is a binary death of art, I think is the mistake. The truth is the war is not mankind versus machine. The reality is that mankind becomes machine. And this is part of the process. So I think integration is the way forward. It doesn't preclude art. There is a way forward. We're still humans. We're still involved. And we have to make a judgment call on a case-by-case basis as we slowly plod our way through this phase in history.
Yeah, I mean, at the time of our recording, I know this will come out, a couple months later or so. As of this morning, the Oscars said it was okay with the use of AI, and they said technology won't disqualify a movie going forward, but that they will favor movies with more human involvement. At least that was the New York Times, article logline. So it's interesting to know that it shouldn't be something like you're saying, completely pushed away by everybody. It should instead be integrated, find a good way to use it to enhance the art form or otherwise make it a little more efficient and better that way.
I think it's a thorny issue because on the one hand, it's also emotional,
Yeah.
but it's also a skills issue. That if we deny the things that it might be able to do, that might aid us, and we're absolutely steadfast about that denial, there is a risk of ending up de-skilled. The solution may end up being not 100% AI, it may be human plus AI, but you de-skilled yourself because you refused it.
Yeah.
That's the practical side. The emotional side is much harder. I don't know the answer to that. Do I like its presence? It's interesting. Do I like its presence in art? It makes me nervous, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, time will. That's the only thing that happens. Yeah, time will tell to see how it really integrates or doesn't over the next 5-10 years plus. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on today. I know we're getting late there for you. It's the end of the evening. If people want to get a hold of you or to follow you on social, what's the best way for them to do that?
I'm at Rob Yescombe on Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky.
Okay, I'll make sure to have that all linked in the show notes, and look forward to more movies and TV coming our way from you soon.
Thank you so much. Shout out Selby Gray, by the way. Best in the business.
Thanks again, Selby, for setting this up.